In a city where everyone thought they knew each other, a group of kids did something unthinkable. They turned on a girl who was nothing but kind to them. This is the heartbreaking story of how one girl's life was changed forever by the cruelty of those she trusted. Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Criminate. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoy the video. Let's get started. I'm going to start by talking about who Junko Furuta was. Junko Furuta was born on January 18, 1971, in Saitama, Japan. She was the daughter of a working-class Japanese family, and although they were very poor, that didn't prevent her from excelling in what she did. She was an excellent student with very good grades, strong recommendations from her teachers, and she had very good relationships with everyone she knew. It's even said that she became quite popular in her school group and had many friends. However, there was something very particular about Junko. She didn't act like her popular peers, which sometimes caused envy and friction with them. She was a girl who didn't like to party or live a wild lifestyle. She was very calm and even didn't want to have sexual relationships or a boyfriend because she felt she was too young. She simply didn't engage in the wild activities that many people her age did. It is said that one of her classmates, named Mijano Hiroshi, was obsessed with her. He liked her very much, but she never paid him any attention. It's said that he was a very dangerous person, involved in a criminal gang or Japanese mafia called the Yakuza. It is said that this is one of the most dangerous mafias in Japan, and the people involved truly have a lot of power and are very dangerous. For this reason, no one would mess with Hiroshi. Everyone was very afraid of him and avoided provoking him due to fear of retaliation. He also had a reputation for being very violent with various people, and in this case, it was no different. So, that's the background information on Junko, and now we begin discussing the case itself. Junko was in her third year of school and was only 16 years old at the time. On November 25th, she was heading home after school when she was approached by 4 of her classmates, all 17 years old, who took her to one of their houses. It is still unclear how they got her to their house, whether they intimidated her or simply invited her and she agreed because she knew them and thus felt comfortable. The 4 classmates were named Miyano Hiroshi, Jo Kamisaku, Minato Nobuharu, and Watanabe Yasushi. Junko disappeared very suddenly and unexpectedly. They knew that her parents were going to be worried, so they forced her to call them on the phone and tell them that she had run away but was okay, and that they wouldn't see her for a long time. She seemed to think that after some time, they would let her go, but that wasn't going to happen. The house where they took Junko was Nobuharu's house. He obviously lived with his parents, and they obviously knew Junko was there. Nobuharu forced Junko to tell them that she was the girlfriend of one of his friends, and although the parents found the situation a bit strange, they didn't say anything because they were also very afraid of Hiroshi, who was their son's friend. They already knew he was involved with the mafia and feared he would do something to them. This is when Junko's nightmare began, in which she suffered horrifyingly disturbing tortures for 44 days at the hands of these 4 men. It is said that on the first day she was locked up, the men assaulted her one after another, and she couldn't do anything to defend herself. It is said that during the first 10 days, she was horribly tortured. At first, they forced her to remain naked. They only gave her water and constantly assaulted her every day. They also forced her to insert all kinds of objects into her private parts and forced her to please herself in front of them. Between days 10 and 30, they began giving her cockroaches and urine as food, and they even started beating her constantly. On the 10th day, it is said that they mounted her and began using her as a sort of punching bag, and as a result, they left her severely battered. As I mentioned, the assaults were a daily occurrence, and Junko suffered at least 400 to 500 assaults during those 44 days she was imprisoned. The worst part is that it wasn't just the 4 men. They also brought in neighbors and friends they knew to assault her. It is said that around 100 people witnessed this situation, but they didn't say anything because they were also afraid of Hiroshi after learning that he was in the mafia. I want to mention some of the tortures she suffered, which are truly horrifying. She endured a total of 25 different tortures. Among them, as I mentioned, was being kept naked most of the time, being assaulted constantly, even inviting more than 100 people to do so, being beaten repeatedly, including with golf clubs, having her face smashed against the floor repeatedly, and being urinated on, sometimes by all 4 at the same time. They photographed all the tortures, and I must warn you that there are some photos available on the internet, but please don't look for them. I would strongly recommend against it, and if you do, be very discreet because they are truly horrific. They also forced her to please herself in front of them and their friends while they drank beer, and they made her insert various objects into her private parts, including bottles and iron bars. As I mentioned, when she asked for food, they forced her to eat cockroaches and drink urine. Once, they did something terrible. They forced her to insert a firework into her rectum, lit it, and of course, it exploded, causing severe burns. They also amputated her left nipple with pliers, dropped weights on her stomach, and punished her every time she urinated because, due to all the beatings, she could no longer control her bladder. One of them later revealed that she was in such bad shape that it took her an hour to crawl to the bathroom from where they kept her. There was a never-ending series of tortures. Some were absolutely horrific. They burned her eyelids, put her in a freezer, broke several of her bones by stomping on her, and inserted a lamp into her private parts, which broke and burned her insides. Among many other things, it was simply horrible. It got to the point where she couldn't even tolerate a sip of water without vomiting. She tried to escape many times without success. On some occasions, one of the parents discovered her and told their son, while on others, the men themselves found out. Once, she managed to get hold of a phone to call for help, but they discovered her and punished her severely by burning her. And on January 5, 1989, it was her last day of life. What happened was the following. She was obviously completely desperate and begged them to please kill her, to move on with their lives and let her die. However, they refused, and instead, they mocked her and challenged her to a game. The game is called Mahjong, which is basically a game with tiles where you have to eliminate certain pieces. It's a very popular game in Japan. In this game, Junko won the round. This enraged the men so much that they began beating her repeatedly and even set fire to her legs and arms until she could no longer endure it and died. It is said that this torture lasted approximately 2 hours until she finally convulsed and passed away, obviously completely tortured and with an absolutely horrific death. As for the boys, after they saw that she was lifeless, they simply took her and placed her in a container filled with cement, dumped her there, and left. It is said that they left her in a very remote area of Kyoto, so it was somewhat difficult to find her. It seems that the hiding place was really good, and she was almost not found. However, it wasn't until a year later that the police decided to reopen the case and find the suspects, as a year had passed with no one held accountable. The youths were found guilty. They were caught and brought to trial. However, something absolutely horrible and shameful happened, especially for that time in Japan, and even now it remains a very sad situation. Because they were minors, they couldn't be given harsh sentences, not even life imprisonment or more than 50 years. To give you an idea, the longest sentence was 17 years, and by now, all of them are free. They spoke to many people, and it was an absolutely terrible case because many knew what had happened, but no one said anything. It is said that most remained silent out of fear of Hiroshi, but this created enormous outrage among the media and the Japanese public in general, as it also exposed the incompetence of the Japanese justice system. Obviously, after all this, Junko's parents won the lawsuit and were awarded 50 million yen, but that doesn't bring back their daughter, nor does it pay for everything those 4 men did by murdering her. Today, it is said that 3 of them continue with their normal lives and have changed their identities. Only one, Watanabe Yasushi, still uses his real name. Because this case was so notorious, a lot has been created around it, movies, 2 series, and even an anime and manga inspired by this terrible story. This tragic story reminds us of the dangers that can lurk in even the most unexpected places. If you found this video informative, please consider subscribing and sharing it with others to help spread awareness.